you, and thank you everybody for joining us today. This is the Wolfstorf-Rosenthal EB-5 Hot Topics webinar.
感谢大家收听我们今天的 EB5 热门话题讲座。
Joining me today is EB-5 Supervising Attorney Vivian Zhu, who will provide simultaneous translation. And again, thank you all for joining us.
我们今天主讲的还是我们律所的主要合伙人 Bernard Wolfstorf 先生，然后我是 EB5 组的主管律师，我是 Vivian， 你们好。
I am going to try and finish the webinar today in approximately 1 hour. At the end of this session, you can email your questions, type your questions in, log on, and you can type your questions in English or Chinese, and we will attempt to answer all of your questions tonight, but please try and keep them as short as possible.
我们今天的讲座预计1个小时，在讲座以后呢，大家可以从网页上直接向我们发问，请大家尽量把问题问得简短一些，用英文或者中文打字都可以。
What I'm going to try and do in today's session is to focus on all the new developments in the EB-5 arena, and I am going to cover a lot of material, but I'm going to go very quickly.
我们今天要跟大家说 EB5 领域的一些新的问题，因为内容比较多，所以可能速度会快一些。
If you have questions or if something was not clear from this webinar, please feel free to contact me directly. You can email me using my email, Bernard@Wolfstorf, or you can email Vivian directly, which is vju@wolfstorf.com. Please feel free to follow up with us if you have any questions or if something is not clear.
因为今天新的内容比较多，所以如果大家对网络讲座的内容有一些问题的话，可以给Bernie 发 email， 也可以给我发 email。
So briefly, running through the topics today, this is a very long list, and some of the topics I will be very quick because we've already touched on them.
大家可以看到今天讲座的主题是比较多的，但是有一些内容呢，我们在曾经的讲座里已经讲过了，所以那部分内容可能会很快的带过。
As everybody knows, the current Regional Center program sunsets on September the 30th in about 3 months, and I will update you on the potential solutions that we expect Congress to pass.
大家知道目前的区域中心项目将在3个月以后，也就是9月30号的时候到期了，所以我们今天会给大家提供一些在立法上面一些新的动态。
Probably the single most complicated issue in terms of the regional center legislation is the new TEA definition, or what definition is correct. One of the ideas that has been proposed is a TEA focused on new market tax credits, which in brief, new market tax credits are given to poor people in poor areas. So this is an idea, it's not a formal proposal at this time.
这次 EB5 变法的其中最重要的一个内容就是 TEA 的重新定义以及它的新的规定。目前有一个新的说法呢，是他们可能会使用一个叫做新兴市场税收抵免这样的一个标准，是给就是美国最穷的经济最困难的区域的来使用的。
The next topic is not an actual current law, but rather a proposed hardship and fraud waiver for investors in failed projects. As many of you may have heard, the J-Peak project in Vermont appears to be an alleged fraud, at least the last one. And the question is, what happens to these investors? What are the options available? Unfortunately, we're getting a lot of questions on this point, and I want to outline what the options are.
第3个主题是就是受到欺骗的失败项目申请人他们的选择。这一个呢，目前还不是现有的法律，只是目前在行业内有提出这样的声音，因为大家也看到类似于像 JPEG 那样涉及欺诈行为的一些项目，然后很多人也在问这个时候应该怎么办。
The other point that I want to deal with is the good news is that for the first quarter of fiscal 2016 and the second quarter of fiscal 2016, that's October through to December and January through to March, the denial rate on I-829s was between 1 and 2%, very low. But I still want to talk about what happens if an 829 is denied, so you have some idea of what the options at that point are.
我们目前看到的好消息是在2016年的前两个2016财年的前两个季度呢，829的拒签率是非常低的，大概是1%到2%这样子。但是我们还是想讨论一下，如果829被拒以后该怎么办。
In many of my previous webinars, we spoke about children aging out, how to protect children from aging out. What we are now seeing is that people want to know, can they file with somebody under the age of 18 as the principal applicant? What are the rules? What will happen? And all I can tell you is this is not 100% settled, but we are now filing for minors. There are projects that are accepting minors. There's some that are not. But as far as I can see, this is now a very important and critical issue. And as I say, it appears that we will be able to file for minors under certain situations, but it's not 100% clear what USCIS's position will be, but we have no choice except to move forward.
我们之前的几个网络讲座呢，重点是在讲怎样避免小孩超龄的问题，但是大家现在可能看到比较多的问题是未成年人是不是能够作为EB-5的主申请人？现在这个问题呢，还是属于一个灰色的阶段。有的项目现在已经开始接受未成年人，有的项目还是不接受。我们觉得在某些情况下面，未成年人是可以作为EB-5主申请人的，但是要满足某些条件。
The next topic, which is new developments at National Visa Center, those of you who've worked with the NVC understand the frustration. Working with them, they always leave the derivatives off, very hard to communicate. There are some positive developments with NVC. We want to talk about those, and we will also talk about the new proposed filing fees, when we expect them to come into play, and how much they will be exactly.
大家如果熟悉 NVC 过程的朋友们可能知道，在这个过程当中有很多的问题，因为这个部门的沟通很不利，然后他们有时候会漏掉附属申请人的名字在那个签证交费通知单上面。我们现在看到 NVC 有一些他们内部的改革和进展，所以今天想跟大家介绍一下。另外的呢，就是新的申请费。大家想跟大家说一下，到底这个新的申请费会是多少钱，然后什么时候会开始生效。
The next topic of processing times for 526s and what the follow-up options are. At the moment, USCIS is saying approximately 16 months, but to be honest, while we do get a lot of approvals and decisions at 16 months, if you are past 16 months, there's virtually no action that can be taken. Inquiries, follow-ups seem to produce only standard responses, and it appears that maybe the only thing to do on a case that is very much past due is to file a mandamus action in the Federal District Court. Our office has been retained and is very active in this arena only because there's no other solution for many of our clients.
另外一个主题就是526现在审批的速度，大家可以在网上看到，现在平均速度是16个月。但是从我们的经验上看呢，就算这个case 已经超过16个月了，但是你就算一直发邮件或者是催促移民局，他们的回复都是非常的一个标准的回复，不会给你很多信息。所以目前来追踪或者是跟进这个申请的唯一的办法，可能就是那个mandamus filing， 就是要去一个履行职责令的诉讼。这个呢，结果现在是目前来看是最有用的，然后我们这边也是做了很多这方面的工作。
USCIS has also announced that they will be doing FDNS fraud detection site visits, both to regional centers. We have not heard any reports of this happening yet, but FDNS is very active in other areas. For example, H1s, L1s, they regularly check the work site location. So we're going to give you some tips on how to get ready and how to prepare for a fraud detection site visit. What is it that you do when the officer calls and we want to get you prepared?
移民局宣布呢，他们即将对区域中心进行一个 FDNS 的实地查访。然后我们目前呢还没有听到过他们真的是去到一个区域中心，但是他们在别的移民领域是非常活跃的，比如说 H1 申请和 L1 申请，他们是经常去这些公司实地查访的。所以我们在这里想跟大家介绍一下如何来应对FDNS 对 EB-5项目的查访。
The next topic I've spoken about quite extensively, so I'm going to be short. That is about the Chinese waiting line. How long is it? What are the potential solutions? And I will give you an update on the proposed numbers as we see them and some of the solutions that we've discussed before. And then finally, the last topic is the requirement that you have to seek to acquire within 1 year of the visa being available. That is in regard to the Child Status Protection Act. So we will briefly update you on that issue as well.
然后我们会非常快的讲到以下2个主题，这是我们曾经的网络讲座讲到的，一个是中国人排期的问题，现在排期最新的数据显示到底有多长，然后来如何解决这个排期的问题。最后一个主题呢是关于如何去 seek to acquire， 就是跟那个 CISPA 的超龄小孩年龄保护有相关的问题。
This slide is all about me and the firm and maybe not so interesting. So let's show a picture of, this is the staff in the Santa Monica office. The people on the right, that's our EB-5 team, and not so interesting. As a lawyer, I just again advise you, this is not legal advice. If you need legal advice, you need to contact us. This is merely for information and discussion purposes only. So let's talk a little bit about the changes to the EB-5 program. Let's talk a little bit about what we expect to happen. The changes that we expect that will happen, again, coming September 30th, 2016, will we see changes in the law? Will we see administrative changes? That is, changes made by immigration without the president signing a new law, without the Congress. So I think we will see some action definitely in both areas, and of course I'm going to talk about them very briefly. So this is not 100%. This is an opinion that's being offered, but what we are expecting to see right now, because of the presidential election, is another continuing resolution, and they will almost certainly give a very short extension to December 15, and then possibly another extension to March 15 next year, without any changes coming from the Congress. So we are anticipating 2 short changes. Why till March 15, 2017? That is when the new Congress will come into power, hopefully with President Clinton, Hillary Clinton leading us next year. And at that point, we can expect to see major legislation being introduced.
大家可以看到的是目前的一个新的消息，但是这个肯定也不是100%准确的了，就是说，但是非常有可能的就是说会在9月30号的时候通过的是一个短期的延期，到12月15号，然后再通过一个短期的延期到明年的3月15号。那这段时间这2个延期呢，都不会有国会立法上的改变，然后因为到那个时候新的总统应该会上台了。然后到那个时候可能才会有一些新的所谓的变法上面的比较大的变革。
The 3 biggest issues, of course, with EB-5 are the integrity measures, which I think are almost guaranteed. the change of the investment amount. This may be handled by statute or it may be handled by regulation, and of course the TEA issue. We don't expect to see big changes before March 15 on the TEA, but we could see a change in the investment amount coming up in December without Congress acting, rather with only immigration making the change in the investment amounts.
第二点，大家可以看到是EB-5领域现在目前急需解决的3个最重要的问题。但是我们觉得呢，在明年3月之前 ，TEA 这一项应该不会有任何变化。但是投资金额呢，可能移民局他们就通过行政手段，而不需要通过总统签订一个新的法律就可以实现了。所以就是说，投资金额的改变可能会在年底就有一些新的消息。
There are numerous bills that have been put into Congress, at least 7 bills that we are aware of. One of the bills, by the way, proposes to increase the number of EB-5 visas by 80%, to push the total annual quota up to 18,000. That is a bill in Congress right now, but to be direct, I do not expect to see Congress pass a new law other than a short extension until March next year.
现在目前向国会递交了一共有7套EB-5的法案，然后每一套法案都有一些不同。我们甚至看到其中一条法案建议说，把EB-5的签证名额从1万个涨到18000个，也就是上涨了80%。但是我们认为在明年3月份之前呢，都不会有通过新的法律。
I mentioned also that we expect more integrity measures, issues of addressing things like commissions, disclosure of fees and relationships. These are all likely to come up in the legislation. But what I would like to do today, moving forward, is to talk about administrative actions, that is, actions that could in fact happen without the Congress formally changing the law. That is, President Obama, whoever the new president, does not have to make any changes. But very recently, USCIS published this notice in the Federal Register that they intend to bring out new regulations, possibly in December. And if you read the language there, it does specifically indicate that, and if you look at the last sentence, it says the required investment amount. So one of the issues that is going to be addressed in the regulation is the required investment amount. If you read, there's one paragraph with 5 lines. The last line specifically says required investment amount. So that will be addressed in the regulations. It is possible that in December of 2016, we will very likely have a price increase starting in December with an increased minimum investment amount, not by statute, by regulation. Immigration promised they would do it this way, and I personally believe that they will do it in December with an increased amount, although at this time we do not know what numbers it would be.
我们想跟大家着重讲一下在行政方面的改变，因为我们刚刚已经说到国会的新立法可能还会要再等到明年3月以后。大家现在看到的这个页面呢是移民局他们的行政法规变更通知，大家可以看到第一段的最后一句话特别的已经指出了他们想要改变那个投资金额，所以我们觉得非常有可能是在今年12月的时候，那个 EB-5投资金额就会涨价。但是目前来说涨价多少我们还不知道。
So, as I mentioned earlier, unfortunately, some high-profile projects such as JPEAK have failed, and we are hopeful that we will see some legislation which will provide solutions for investors who invested in good faith but who were the victim of fraud.
最近呢，很不幸的，大家可以看到很多有一些比较有名的项目，像 JPEG 一样，他们也会就是出现了一些问题，所以我们目前非常希望看到在立法上有对善意投资人这种参与到失败项目里面的善意投资人解决他们目前处境的一些解决的办法。
The two-step green card that we have in EB-5 is designed based on the marriage framework. In the marriage situation, if somebody gets married to an American citizen, they get a 2-year green card, and then they have to apply to remove the conditions, and then they get a full green card. So the only other program that followed the marriage framework is the EB-5 green card.
就是 EB-5的这现在的法律框架呢，基本上是模仿了在婚姻移民的一种程序，也就是说，比如说你跟一个美国公民结婚了，你首次拿到的是一个2年的有条件绿卡，然后2年之后你才能再递交一个申请来解除条件获得永久绿卡。现在呢，目前用这种方法的一个就是婚姻移民，一个就是 EB-5。
Unfortunately, there is no good faith waiver for EB-5 at the present time. If the marriage fails, and it fails because of the U.S. citizen's fault and the foreign national did nothing wrong, then that person can still get the full green card.
我们现在看到的就是在结婚的时候呢，如果是跟美国公民结婚，在2年的临时绿卡阶段，如果他们就离婚了，但是这个并不是因为是那个拿绿卡的外国人的过错，而是因为是美国公民的过错，那么就算他们在2年内离婚了，这个外国人还是可以获得绿卡。但是目前 EB-5呢就没有对这种善意投资人投到失败项目的这种拿到永久绿卡的这种保护措施。
However, in the EB-5 context, you have to prove the jobs were created, and you have to show that you invested the full amount. So in one situation, for example, where the company went bankrupt, they were still able to get the approval because the money was invested and the jobs were created, and then the company went bankrupt. However, if the money is stolen and the jobs are not created, under the current law, finding a solution is very difficult.
大家可以看到，比如说，因为EB-5的要求，一个就是说你的投资要一直保持在公司当中，第二个就是你要创造足够多的就业机会。比如说，如果是一个公司破产了，但是你钱已经投入公司，并且已经创造了就业机会，那么这个人的绿卡还是可能获得的。但是如果是投资人的钱被偷了，或者是被挪用了，而且没有工作机会被创造出来的话，那这个人可能就拿不到绿卡了。
And even if the money is returned to the investor, and the investor decides to make a new investment or put in more money into a new project, unfortunately, they do not keep their place in the waiting line. This is wrong, but this is the current position of immigration. So we're finding that if people invest in a bad project, very often the child will age out.
并且呢，依照现在的法律，就算受到欺骗的投资人最终把投资款拿回来了，然后又投了一个新的项目，他们还是不能保留之前第一个申请的那个优先日期。所以这个虽然是现在的法律，但是我们认为是非常不合理的。所以通常受到这种失败项目侵害的那个申请人呢，他们的小孩就很有可能会超龄。
Now, as I mentioned, in the first 6 months of this fiscal year, less than 25 829s were denied.
我们刚刚提到了，在这个财政年的前2个季度呢，只有很少的829被拒。
This reflects the USCIS policy of trying to deny cases at the 526 stage, not at the 829 stage.
这也反映了移民局现在的一个政策倾向，就是说他们比较倾向于在526阶段拒签申请人，而不是在829阶段来拒签。
Now, the current USCIS guidance says that if an 829 is denied, a notice to appear in front of an immigration judge should be issued.
就目前他们的工作指南上说呢，如果一旦829被拒的话，移民局就应该发出遣返令，就是 notice to appear， 这个其实是让申请人到法官面前去出庭的这样一个通知。
Well, I'm pleased to say that we have never received a denial on an 829 in this office. However, I have picked up new clients who had other lawyers whose cases were denied, and we had to deal with those cases, so we can advise you on what is likely to happen.
所幸的是我们这边呢，目前还没有829客户被拒签的情况，但是有一些是通过其他律师递交829的客户呢，他们829被拒之后来找到我们，所以我们也可以给大家一些建议。
Now the good news is, in the few cases that I have heard about with 829s being denied, the notice to appear in front of the immigration judge is not being issued in all the cases, and many of the people with denied 829 are just left in a state of limbo, uncertainty.
我们现在看到的呢，就是说在少数829被拒的申请人，他们并没有收到移民局发出的遣返令，所以这就导致申请人目前是在一个没有明确状态的一种条件下面。
But here's the good news. The good news is that until the judge orders the EB-5 investor with the denied 829 to be removed from the U.S., the person can obtain a temporary green card stamp, usually in 1-year increments, sometimes 6 months, but usually 1 year, and that stamp allows them to both work and also to travel.
但是实践上来说呢，只有移民法官命令，就是给出最后的决定，要这个829被拒的申请人离开美国。在法官给出最终这样的判决之前呢，这个829被拒的申请人和全家都可以一直在美国工作、生活，以及可以自由的出入境美国。但是他们每年就是需要去盖一个临时绿卡的签章在护照里面，但是并不会多大程度的影响他们的绿卡的这样一个状态。
So, if you can get the 526 approved and get your conditional green card under current policy, even if the second stage is denied, people are allowed to remain in the United States and obtain temporary work authorization.
所以就算829被拒的申请人，照目前的法律看来呢，他们还是可以一直在美国待下去。
Now, on to a completely new topic. Can a minor be a principal investor? As I said, the answer is yes.
下一个话题就是未成年人是不是能做EB-5的主申请人？我们认为是可以的。
However, it's not 100% yes.
但是呢，目前还不是100%的确定。
One way to do this that is absolutely 100% is to actually have the minor go to the state court and have the child emancipated. Then they are legally treated as an adult. That, however, is quite a lengthy proceeding.
有一个100%可以行得通的方法呢，就是让这个未成年人去法官面前申请一个脱离父母管辖的这样一个申请，在美国叫做 emancipated， 就是说他比如说是16岁、17岁接近成年的这个年纪，他就可以不用父母做他的监护人了，可以自己决定自己的生活。
Now, I can tell you, I filed, for example, for a 10-year-old as a principal applicant, a high fashion model 10-year-old child. That was not a problem. She was approved, and the government does not seem to have an age limit on having a child apply as a principal applicant, at least in the area of extraordinary ability.
我们认为在移民法上呢，政府可能不大限制主申请人的年龄，因为我们曾经给一个10岁的一个俄罗斯超模小女孩递交了杰出人才的申请，所以我们认为在移民法上面，移民局是 可以允许未成年人作为主申请人的。
And it is also interesting that on the 485 application for adjustment of status, once the child is 14, they then have to pay the adult filing fee, which is currently $1,070.
同样的，在485的递交上面也可以看到，他们的区分年龄的界限是14岁，也就是14岁以上的人必须要和成年人一样付成年人的申请费了。
Interestingly, Chinese law is actually kind of similar. Chinese law says that in order for a minor, and I'm not an expert on Chinese law, but it does say that in order for a minor, they can do some limited civil contracts, but in order to participate, they would need to have an agent or a guardian appointed to act on their behalf. There's also an exception if the money to be invested by the minor is primarily earned by the minor, then they can engage in binding contracts.
在中国的民法上面呢，其实有一些很有意思的规定，就是说某些未成年人可以自己的决定自己的，就是可以做出一些民事法律行为，特别是如果他们的钱是自己赚的，那他可以决定这个钱的去向。但是在大部分情况下呢，未成年人签订合同的时候呢，还是需要由监护人或者是父母跟他一起签。
The solution in the United States law that is most likely to be effective is under the Uniform Gifts or Transfers to Minor Act. This is called UTMA, and under this act, the guardian can in fact sign, it is regarded as vesting with the child. The solution seems to be under, and every state has a version of UTMA currently in force, but as I've explained, while it is possible to effectively transfer or gift the money to the minor under UTMA, and potentially for that minor to make a binding commitment, that has to be structured correctly by the regional center and by the investor.
在美国呢，就是让未成年人做EB-5主申请人，可能最有用的方法就是通过这个美国未成年人赠与法。在这个法律下面呢，就是它可以根据某些方式使那个监护人所签订的一些协议或者是做出的投资完全是给未成年人受用的。但是如果使用这个法律的话，就需要区域中心来特别设立一个这样的程序。
The next point I wanted to mention about new developments at NVC, there's a new email address, nvceb5@state.gov. The problem we were having, which was that the spouse and children were left off, you can now email that information to this, and you do not need to send the civil documents, and you will get a fast response. This is a new and positive development.
现在大家可以看到是 NVC 的一些新的改进工作，就是如果他们在那个签证收费通知单上再遗漏了小孩子或者配偶的名字的话，大家现在可以直接发 email 把这些信息给他们，而不需要再递交他们的民事，就是出生公证或者是结婚证这样的民事文件了。然后他们通常回复会相当的快，就是一般会可以在当天就可以收到他们的回复。
Okay, so I spoke to you about legislative changes and administrative changes. The government has already proposed a regulation to increase the government filing fees. Let me tell you with absolute certainty, this one is going through.
大家看到的之前政府提交的EB-5申请费上涨这个建议呢，我们现在确定这个是肯定会实施的。
How do I know this? Well, the government has problem in America passing new laws and passing regulations. When it comes to increasing the fees, the government has no problem. And in my 30 years of practice, I've always seen this happen quickly. No matter what we do or say, the price always goes up.
因为就我们的经验来看呢，虽然他们就是政府在通过新的法案或者是新的法规上面很慢，但是他们在涨价上面 申请费上涨这个上面是从来不会拖沓的，所以通常申请费上涨就是很快就可以实施。
My speculation is within 90 days of the date this was published, you will see new price increase on the filings. So let's go through them. The 526 fee goes from 1,500 to 3,675, 145% increase. I think that's ridiculous, but expect that to happen within 3 months. We're going to be paying more than double the price.
就是在他们发布这个上涨通知之后的大概3个月时间呢，他们应该就会开始实施这个新的申请费，所以大家看到526申请费上涨了1倍多，所以现在是他们将来会使用新的申请费是3675块。
So from the current, I normally tell people that it's going to be the current fees, filing fees are just over $5,000. The new number that you have to use is $7,500 for government filing fees approximately. So you need to advise your clients that the increase will almost certainly go up. Don't find that your client is unhappy. Tell them about it now. This is almost 99% sure.
所以这个我们再次重申，这个申请费上涨几乎是99%的确定了，所以大家希望尽快通知客户，就是这个申请费上涨这个事情。
The cost of applying for a regional center is also going to go up to almost $18,000, and the annual reporting, which is currently $0, is going up to $3,000.
现在那个注册区中心这个费用呢，也上涨到18000块钱，然后大家看到这个 annual reporting 这个目前没有变化。
Just to add to the additional fees, there's also a proposal that there will be a $20,000 fee for each regional center on top of this. So filing fees, annual filing fees, together with initial incorporation, close to $50,000.
但是区域中心好像在这个申请费的基础上还要再交一个2万块钱的一个审查费。
So let's have a look at the current processing times. It says 16.2 months for the 526 and 18.3 months, kind of ridiculous for the 829s. Those are probably the longest waiting lines or close to the longest I've ever seen. The fact is, your clients see this, your clients believe this. This is not true. It takes longer.
大家可以现在看到网上抛出来的526的申请平均审核时间是16.2个月，而829的申请是非常长的，已经达到18.3个月。我们相信这是有史以来已经达到一个最长的审核时间了，但是我们看到的某些申请比这个时间还要长。
So what are you going to do? Okay, well, you can send an email to IPO. There's also the so-called escalate follow-up email. You can submit an inquiry to the Ombudsman's office, or you can even contact your local congressman or senator. In my experience today, none of these steps have any impact.
所以对于那种申请已经超时的客户来说呢，第一个可能就是你可以通过邮件去联系 IPO， 或者是你甚至可以给他们发送升级邮件，或者是给信访办公室让他们去跟移民局跟进，甚至是联系你们当地的国会议员。但是我们现在看到的这些方法呢，都不是特别的有效。
So the only thing that you can do is to file a writ of mandamus.
目前看到最有效的方法呢，还是就是递交这个履行职责令诉讼。
Most people will say that case needs to be at least 6 months past the published processing time. Some people say 12 months before taking this ultimate action.
大家通常认为呢，必须是在平均审核时间超过平均审核时间6到12个月的时候，才可以使用这个方法。
This is not something that should be done randomly. Engaging in federal district court litigation means, number one, you have to have a good case, and you have to be able to document your efforts to solve the problem before you can get a judge to order immigration to make a decision.
但是运用这个方法呢，第一就是你要找一个好的律师，第二就是你要之前在递交这个诉讼之前呢，你要做出一些解决的办法，就像我们前面那一页提到的，你要给移民局发送邮件，或者是通过其他办法来试图解决你的问题。当问题无法解决的时候，你才有证据跟法官倾诉说，我现在要诉讼他们，因为我做了这些事情，现在他们全都不管用。
So immigration explained that they plan to bring in site visits on 3 steps. Number 1, regional center audits, that they will actually send officers out to check with the regional center. Number 2, that they will start scheduling interviews at the 829 stage on difficult cases. And then finally, they will also be visiting the regional centers, including the new commercial enterprise and the job creating enterprise. So lots of increased visits by officers, no longer just paper, but we expect this to happen very soon. And my experience with these visits is you get no notice. So the officer doesn't call and say, I'm on the way. They just knock at your door.
移民局现在他们想要做的3个审查措施，第一个就是去审核你们的文件，第二个就是审核在829阶段对申请人开始面试，第三个就是说他们决定要开始去区域中心或者是你们的新商业机构、新商业公司和就业公司开始实地查访。根据我们的经验呢，这个会马上就会开始这个措施，而且他们通常呢就是临时的这样去查访，也不会给区域中心通知。
So number 1, one of the things you have to do if you run a regional center is make sure you have and keep good records. And number 2, you need to have a plan. You need to have an action plan. If you get an FDNS visit, what do? You need to train your receptionist to call the lawyer or call the president. You need to be ready for these. Do not wait and do not be caught unprepared.
所以对于区域中心来说，应对这样的实地查访，首先就是你要把所有的记录都保存下来，你的各种文件、各种记录等。第二就是你要有一个行动计划，要培训你的员工，让他们遇到这种情况告诉他们遇到这种情况应该怎么办，应该要跟哪个领导人报告，然后不要在临时的时候发现没有这个行动计划而手足无措。
We have also published a blog on this, and I understand we've also put it on our WeChat. So for more information on this topic, go to Wolfsdorf Connect, our blog, or check our WeChat. There's a full guidance blog on what to do with site visits.
我们就这个主题呢，有发布一个很详细的 blog， 而且在我们的微信公众号上也有这样的文章，大家可以上网去看一下。
Okay, so we've spoken a lot about the waiting line problem. We only have 10,000 visas a year, and we have a waiting line. So how long is this waiting line? Let's talk about this waiting line, and let's figure out how did we get there.
我们现在来讲一下这个中国申请人 EB-5 排期的问题。
As you can see in this chart, that the total number of EB-5 cases filed in, for example, 2003 was 71.
大家看见的，在2003年递交的 EB-5 申请是71个。
So there were lots of unused visas, but in the last few years, all the visas have been used and will be used.
但是在过去几年呢，这个申请数量涨得非常快，所以签证的名额使用的速度也是非常快的。
We can see that this program has become very popular in the last few years.
就是大家可以看到，在过去的几年当中，这一个 EB-5 投资项目变得非常的红火。
So like any place, once it's popular, a waiting line starts. So here, moving forward with this chart, we are currently showing the different types of applications that are filed. And what you can see here is 89% of EB-5 was in the 500,000 targeted employment area.
这个表上面有一些数据，大家可以看到89%的 EB-5申请呢是在 TA 地区的申请。
Nobody filed 1 million regional center cases.
目前区域中心是没有100万的这样投资的项目的。
The 500 direct actually went up to 3% this year, which is quite a big increase.
直投呢增长了3%，其实这个也是一个比较大的增长了。
And even the 1 million direct went from less than 1% to almost 2%.
100万的直投呢也从不到1%增长到2%。
However, EB-5 is still a regional center 500,000 program.
但是大家可以看到 EB-5目前还是被区域中心50万投资这样的一个格局所操控。
So what we can see here is as of March, the end of March, there were 20,000 petitions pending.
所以在3月底的时候，现在有超过2万个申请还在审理当中。
And just for information, there's 4,700 829s pending, more than ever before.
现在连829呢也有4000多个在审核当中，这是创了历史最高的记录。
This slide again shows 83% of the program last year was Chinese. It's actually gone down to 80%. I expect China will actually go down in numbers probably to 75 or 70% as other countries move up. South Korea has moved up, Vietnam has moved up, and we will see other countries moving up as well.
大家可以看到2015年财年中国申请人占了83%，但是实际上我们现在看到这个数据已经下降到80%了，所以我们可预测呢，中国申请会持续的下降到70%或者是75%，因为从其他国家的申请数字来看，他们是在一个持续上升的这样一个状态当中。
We also see that for 2016, the denial rate is almost 25%. That's 1 in 4 petitions being denied.
大家也可以看到，2016年526拒签率已经高达了25%了，也就是说每4个申请当中有1个被拒掉。
Why I include this is I'm trying to calculate the waiting line. We know there's 20,000 petitions pending. 1/4 of them will be denied. So 15,000 petitions will hopefully be approved, and those people will all need visas.
我们为什么写出这个是为了计算现在排期到底有多长？因为大家之前看到有2万个申请还在审理当中，如果说是拒签率是25%的话，那么15000个申请会通过，那么这些申请都会需要占用那个绿卡的名额。
Because Chinese families are small, the correct number would be 3 visas for each petition. So we're looking at a total of 45,000 visas to clean out the current backlog of pending petitions.
所以中国的家庭通常是以3个人为单位的，那么就是说15000个申请呢，需要45000个绿卡名额，所以现在需要45000个绿卡名额才能消除掉目前在审理当中的这些申请的名额。
Add to that at least 1 year of supply of EB-5 cases pending at NVC.
在目前呢，现在在 NVC 等待审核的签证数量也至少有1万个。
So if we need 45,000 visas for the pending petitions and at least 1 year for the pending cases at NVC, we get 5.5 years.
所以如果现在就526现在所需的名额是45000个 ，NVC 所需的名额是1万个来看的话，就是一共是55000个名额是需要的，那就是说是5年半这样的一个等待的时间。
However, while I've heard people say 6 or 7 years, I think it still could be less than 5 years.
但是虽然现在很多人说排期会达到6到7年这样子，但是我们还是相信排期会始终保持在5年以下。
Plus, Congress may in fact increase the quota next year, in which case it would definitely be less than 5 years.
另外，加上国会明年肯定会做出一些措施来增加签证的名额或者其他解决的办法，所以我们相信，排期是肯定不会超过5年的。
So we do have a 3, 4, 5-year wait. Remember that a lot of people will drop out. Some children will age out. Some people will decide not to immigrate. Some people will get old and die. Excuse me. But the reality is not everybody in that waiting line will end up getting a green card.
但是就这个时间来看的话，就这个目前所需的名额来看，也不是最终一定的，因为有些人可能在中途会放弃申请，有些人可能决定不再移民美国了，有的小孩子会超龄，所以这个所需要的签证数量是没有那么多的。
So these are the numbers for the first 6 months of this year. Interestingly, China went down to 80%. South Korea moved into second place, and Venezuela came back up into the top 5. Venezuela is in a real mess right now.
大家可以看到，现在在2016年3月呢，中国已经降到80%了，然后第2名是韩国，第3名越南，然后委内瑞拉现在新增加到第5名，现在这个国家是目前一个比较糟糕的一个状态。
This slide merely shows why we have 3 visas for every petition. Basically, those are the numbers, 2,919 principals, and in addition, we had almost 6,000 derivative visas. So that's where we get the 3-to-1 formula.
这一页是显示我们怎么样算出每个家庭需要3个签证名额的，就是说，大家可以看到主申请人大概占了30%，然后附属申请人占60%，所以以平均来看的话，每个家庭需要3个EB-5的绿卡名额。
This is my conservative slide. It says 5.5 years. I think it's 5. I think it could be 4.5, assuming there's no changes. But why this is so important is you have to decide, is a 16-year-old going to age out? Should the 16-year-old be the principal? Is a 17-year-old going to age out? I think 17-year-old is dangerous. I think 16-year-old may be at risk. I think 15-year-old probably will be okay as a derivative, but I cannot give that as advice because I do not know the future.
这一页可能看起来是一个比较保守的，因为写的是5到6年的排期，但是我们觉得排期可能还是不会超过5年，可能4年到5年这样子。那为什么要看排期时间呢？大家可能就是需要决定到底是多大年纪的小孩可以作为附属申请人。我们目前觉得呢，17岁是比较危险的，16岁也有一定的风险，但是15岁的可能还是比较安全。但是我们因为无法预测未来国会会做出的一些解决措施，所以我们现在不能明确的告诉大家多少岁以下的小孩就可以安全的作为附属申请人。
So for June and July, we see the numbers are now frozen on February 15, 2014.
我们看到2016年7月这个签证公告版呢，是就6月来说是没有变动的，还是2015年2月14日这样的一个截止日期。
This is of course chart A. Here is the complete record of all the waiting line since the waiting line started in May last year, just over a year ago, up until May last year, no waiting line. And now this shows you the projections for the rest of this year.
这一页就是我们总结了从去年开始有史以来的排期这样的一个过程，以及我们给出了今年8、9月份的这个截止日期的预测。
The bottom line for Chinese-born is there's virtually no movement between now and the end of this year.
总的来说呢，从现在开始一直到年底，可能这个排期的进展都是非常非常慢的。
So in the 3 or 4 months leading up till September, the visa bulletin is not even moved, is hardly moved 1 month.
所以一直到9月呢，这个截止日期几乎是没有移动的。
This is actually very scary because you now see that to move from January 8 up until February 22, to move 2 months is taking 6 months. or more.
这个排期现在看来非常严重，因为大家可以看到从2014年1月8号这个截止日期到现在的2月15号这个日期，已经花掉了数月的时间。
So this is actually very scary because we did a blog on this as well. If you want to read our blog, you can see it at Wolfsdorf Connect, talking about the visa numbers not moving. But this is a very strange thing that happened.
大家如果关注我们的微信公众号的话，也可以看到我们曾经写过一篇比较详细的 blog，就是关于这个排期的问题。
So by the end of this year, the waiting line will be at 30 months, 2.5 years.
所以到今年呢，这个排期会达到29个月、30个月，这个大概是这个程度。
So the current waiting line for Chinese applicants is 28.5 months. It will go to 30 months, but this is the longest that it's ever been.
所以现在的排期是28.54个月，然后到9月的时候可能会到30个月，这是已经是目前我们有史看到最长的排期。
Let's see how this works in real life. If your petition was filed in March, you may not be current until November of this year.
所以说，如果你是在2014年3月递交的，可能你的优先日期到今年11月的时候才可以排到。
If your case was filed in May 2014, you may not be current until April of next year. So the issue here is Child Status Protection Act. This is the ability to freeze the child's age if the visa is available under Chart A.
大家看到儿童移民身份保护法呢，这个主要就是说告诉大家在 A 表你的日期到的时候，怎么样去决定这个小孩子是不是超龄。
You are only allowed to deduct the time the petition was pending from the child's age.
因为你只能把526审核时间从小孩子的年龄当中减去。
So the problem is that you will maybe get 1 year protection, not maybe 2 years protection if the petition is pending longer, but not indefinite protection.
所以，就现在526平均审核速度来看的话，你可能是就是小孩可能得到1年或者2年的一个保护，但是这个保护有时候就可能不够。
There's this requirement that you must seek to acquire. Previously, the government said you can file DS-230. They're now saying you have to file DS-260.
而且就是锁住小孩子年龄呢，你还要去做一步，就是叫 seek to acquire。以前呢，他们允许我们 file 递交 DS-230去锁住小孩年龄，但是现在后来他们今年3月的时候改变了，就说只能递交 DS-260才能锁住小孩子年龄了。
So these are examples of what happens under the different situations. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about solutions. There's several solutions going on. I've spoken about these before. One is not to include derivatives. That's been done with several laws before. And the other one is to recapture some of the unused visas. Those are two potential solutions.
其中最常见的2个解决方法呢，一个就是不计算家庭成员，就是除了主申请以外的人所占有的名额。第二个呢，就是重新再把以前没有用掉的绿卡名额再重新投入使用。
And we're coming to the end. The one that I do want to talk about is the possibility that they will open Chart B to file adjustments in October. We won't know this until September, but I am hopeful that there will be some solution. We don't need new laws. If Congress would only, if immigration would only allow us to file under Chart B, we would be able to protect most of the children, and we would be able to get work permits and travel permits, the so-called red card, if they allow us to use Chart B as they did in October and November last year.
还要我们关注的是今年10月到底 B 表会不会开放这个情况。就算他们法律上没有给出任何解决办法，但是如果能允许我们用 B 表来递交调整身份申请，而让申请人获得红卡以及锁住小孩子年龄的话，这个将会是对排期一个非常大的解决办法。
So please keep in touch. We will definitely have another webinar. I don't want to do these every month. I will only do them when there is something interesting to talk about. Some of this is repeated so that you become more and more knowledgeable, but this is the red card. That's a picture of the red card. That is a work permit and travel permit that you can get while the application is pending if they open Chart B.
所以就 B 表的进展的，如果有新的进展，我们会随时跟进，也会再开一些新的网络讲座来跟大家讨论这个问题。那大家现在看到的就是递交485以后你拿到的红卡，这是一个可以允许在美国给任意雇主工作以及任意出入境美国的这样一个卡。
It is not 100% guaranteed that filing the adjustment of status will freeze the child's age if you're filing under Chart B, but if this was my child, I would definitely try this as possibly the only way to save the child if they allow us to file under Chart B.
虽然我们现在不是100%的确定，就是说如果根据 B 表递交的485是不是可以锁住小孩子的年龄，但是就目前看来，这应该是唯一的而且最有用的办法了。所以大家为了保住小孩子的话，可能会试用任何可能有效的方法。
Last October, November, we filed over 40 cases. Every one of those people has got their work permit, got their travel permit, and they are very happy, and they're not actually worried that the waiting line has got much longer.
就是去年10月的时候 B 表开放的时候，我们给大概40多个申请人递交了485申请，现在他们都已经拿到红卡了，然后可以在美国居住，可以在美国工作，以及可以自由的出入境美国。现在这些客户都非常高兴，然后他们可能也就没有那么担心这个排期的问题了。
If you have questions, please feel free to email them to Mary Ma, MMA @wolfsdorf.com. Mary is our marketing specialist. She speaks Chinese, so you can email directly in Chinese. So please feel free to email us any further questions that you may have. So I need 20 seconds just to open this up to questions for you, and we will be ready to answer your questions. The first question is, will the slides be available? Yes. So the slides will be made available. Let's see, will FDNS conduct site visits at private EB-5 investor enterprises? Yes. The answer is yes. Does it make a difference between regional center or direct with regard to fraud detection? It's kind of too early to tell. I expect that there will be follow-up. There will be follow-up from FDNS at private investors. So is there any good news to look forward to in the next 12 months? Is there good news? You know, the good news, I suppose, is that the program will probably be extended, the price will be increased, and, you know, the green card for Australia is 5 million Australian dollars. For New Zealand, it's 3.5 million. For the United Kingdom, it's 2 million pounds. 500,000, I think, is very reasonable. It's quite frankly very cheap. So as far as I'm concerned, the current deal is a good deal. We seem to have no more questions. Very surprising. so few questions today. So I am going to end this more or less on time. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today. It's been a pleasure to speak with you. I'm off to China tomorrow, so look forward to meeting with you, seeing you, and until next time, I wish you well. And Tai Chen, Vivian, thank you so much for translating. It's been a pleasure to speak with you tonight.